And it is now my honor to introduce our final speaker this morning, another one of our own, member of the Six Pack, Brigadier General Thomas H. Todd III, the Army Program Executive Officer. Thomas, you want this?
I got one. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Steve. Thanks. Can you hear me okay? All right, well, that was a great briefing by General Gabriel. I didn't hear anything. I heard him say go Cavs, but nothing about the Browns for some reason. Well, and once again, a draft without any Alabama players on your team, which Alabama fans are perfectly good with, by the way. Cool. So this is our relationship, and we have a good one. I will say that. I'm honored to certainly be part of the enterprise that General Gaylor leads. John Evans, a teammate on, certainly General Frank Tate, soon to be Dave Francis, and obviously General Gabriel and John Shipley. I will say this, you'll see a picture in just a minute of Joe Heckerell. Thanks so much for the prayer this morning. Our PM for Apache had to take a knee. Colonel Taos Shepard stepped in the gap, and Joe is fighting daily, so keep him in your hearts and prayers. If we could, want to just start with a quick video. It's nowhere near at the movies like we just had, which was awesome, by the way. But this is a little bit on aviation team at PO Aviation. So go ahead and roll the quick video. Okay, so that's a little bit from the team. We do view ourselves critical then, critical now, and critical tomorrow. There's no really seams between us and the future. We're working obviously very well with General Wally Rugen as he develops one of those programs, Future Vertical Lift, and we look forward to continuing to do so. This is our team. If you haven't seen them before, real quick for an orientation. Again, Joe Heckerell, designee as our Chief of Staff right now. Ray Seller stepping in very well as his deputy to help out. We've got a tremendous staff and PMs aligned with really platforms. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is in my really first 14 months as the PEO, how we've attempted to operationalize and integrate across the PEO. Because we can no longer be stovepiped, we can no longer be OEM focused, we no longer can just be really platform focused. So much of what we'll talk about today is our efforts along those ways, as well as I'll try to give you a portfolio update, if you will, on some of our programs that you might be interested in. Next. So we manage, this is actually now about 35% of the Army's major defense acquisition programs within one PEO. MDAPs, major defense acquisition programs, are defined by law as really big programs. That's not what it says in the law, by the way. But it says there are a ton of resources that we're putting towards them, towards really major platforms. The other services look at them as ships or big aircraft. We look at them, obviously, in the Army as ground platforms or aircraft in support of the ground fight. 50 billion in FMS cases alone right now. Great partners in industry, great partners throughout the world. And we want to keep that up because I will tell you that part of what makes these Army programs go is our international partners. The commitment that we have, we could never afford what we do without you, so we look forward to continuing to support that. As you saw at the end of the video, the Black Hawks that we've recently put in Afghanistan that are now there in force and being trained by our team and maintained by our team, as well as SATMO and other great partners. Really, that is one of the reasons we were able to do that. So we have roughly 3,000 folks. I'll talk to you a little bit about them in just a minute. Next slide. We obviously have a great legacy. Really, today's modernization is tomorrow's readiness. My boss, Dr. Jetty, the AAE, and Mr. White, who you saw yesterday, talk greatly about this all the time. We have a tremendous history in developing many systems, and most recently some of these that you see up here that we partnered with industry on. But I want to talk to you a little bit about character and the character of our environment. We are asked, quite frankly, if I was asked you to raise your hand right now and say what comes to your mind when I say the word acquisition, you would say things like slow, bureaucratic, encumbered, right? Technology paced. We're not really interested in keeping that character. We want to change it. We want to get at really rapid where we can, and we've done some things. We were able to put those Black Hawks with the great help of many partners into theater and begin training in Afghanistan within 1 year. We're able to integrate new weapon systems onto the Gray Eagle within a matter of 1 year. So modular open systems, we talked about that while he talked. I'll show you what we're doing right now in advance of that with industry. Models-based system engineering. One of our programs right now is entered test. Our test pilots fly it. We ask the OEM to work reverse cycle at night. It helps that they're on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast, relatively. We find issues through model-based, really coding. They're able to turn those new drops by the morning, the next morning. We're able to drop them in and go to flight test and see how they do. That is significant. If you know the business of regression testing and you know how long it takes to drop a new set of software and do the full regression testing to be able to put it in the aircraft, it can take up to 1.5 years. We're able to now turn software changes overnight. That's a paradigm shift. Relatively unnoticed, but we hope it'll be something that you notice in the future. Incremental tech insertion, finding where we are in rhythms that co-align with the commercial industry as technology advances, whether it be software drops every 18 to 36 months or overnight if they're minor patches, whether it be firmware drops every 3 years or so, whether it be hardware processor drops every 5 years or so, or it could be major platform development, which is typically occurring on about a whole new platform, a new clean sheet new platform every 40 years, and seeing what we could do to make that more agile and less expensive. Some of the things that we're adding to our portfolio is autonomy. I'll talk to you about that today. Holistic survivability, you heard about earlier, and cybersecurity, we're having to work vulnerabilities across the platforms. Next. So you saw this last year. Really, it hasn't changed a whole lot. The priorities of the branch continue to be consistent to us. Get after what we consider current capability, get after some midterm capabilities, and continue to work the future. Next. All right. So this I like to put up because this really shows our enterprise, from TRADOC to S&T to the PEO to the Material Command and AMCOM. Really, this is what, if you think about it, that when you add resources into that General Rugen is struggling to integrate for the future. And it is a beast. It is a large task at hand. What the other programs that we're using right now are either here spinning out, they're in design, development, or deliver, and that's what I consider to be our main mission and hand off to you, the user. It is not the end of what we do. As you can see, we stay tightly latched with AMCOM for anything that he needs to ask for our help on and partnership on, but it is aligned with those priorities. We do take things through robust testing, although we have begun to initiate many quick reaction capabilities in Army Aviation. I will show you some things that we do for the ISR world, for other commands that we've been doing historically for years that I think Army Aviation is going to have to get used to. Because what it's going to bring you is it's going to bring you rapid capabilities, but it's not going to bring you perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good enough, and what we're after is really getting an initial capability to you, which might mean it doesn't have all the bells and whistles you want. But left with the option of go slow and get all the bells and whistles you want, we feel that we need to push it to you, even though it might be an initial capability only. Next slide. So we work hard as we operationalize PO Aviation to understand really our footprint throughout the world, and most people do not know that today we have 1,225 contractors, government, civilians, and military deployed around the world, PO Aviation. And they're deployed in support of the COCOMs. They're conducting missions and train, whether it be net, sustain, systems that have not transitioned to sustainment yet, and really operate. We have quite a few ISR operators out there today. That's something that, quite frankly, we look to transition. We don't look to do that in an enduring fashion, but we're ready to do it if called upon. So we have a great workforce out there that's tied in operationally today. I'd be happy to go over that with you, but we remain cab focused. Next slide. So if you were to ask our team this year, as we've talked about, why do we come to work every day at PO Aviation? Yes, we're technologists. That's a toolkit in our tool bag. We come to work first and foremost for our soldiers, but we come to work to design the future cabs, if you really think about it. We're the ones that are asked to take really what is a set of either requirements or, if you will, a problem statement, and see if it's not an S&T experiment, how can we then improve these things that are already in the fleet? I call it the current fleet. To me, it's current. I won't ever call it legacy. Legacy is something I'm divesting, because these have tremendous capabilities for our current cabs. Some of them also permeate the BCTs. Ultimately, what we do is we try to take things and make this unit integrated in a way that we no longer develop a set of software for a particular platform that has a set of standards that it works with, but quite frankly never quite gets there. So one of the things that you'll see at the end of my brief is how are we integrating across all this, so that this commander, these commanders, those great soldiers and aviators aren't the first people to have to try to integrate it on the battlefield. And this is something I've committed to General Gaylor to do, and we'll get there within this year. Next slide. These are just a highlight of some of the ISR platforms that we have fielded and are fielding. We'll talk to you about that. I thought it would be best if I didn't just specifically talk about things that really are revolving around the Combat Aviation Brigade, but ultimately these are a lot of enablers on the battlefield, whether it be manned or unmanned. We have a large workforce in PO Aviation that we put in the field today and are going to put in the field tomorrow. Next. Okay, so to dig into the portfolio a little bit, to give you some updates, which is something that I know you're always interested in. We're relatively confident in. I will say relatively just simply because I'm always watching my six to see if there's something that we learn along the way that's going to change really expectations that I need to give you. But first and foremost, the UH-60 Victor was delivered last year on time for its first flight test. It's conducted over 130 developmental test flight hours. It is really our open architecture cockpit. And by open architecture cockpit, I mean we don't have to go back to the original equipment manufacturer to make changes. There's nothing open if I have to come back to the one that sold it to me. I'm just going to give you that as a little bit of a axiom. Our struggle is, do I have to go back in our aircraft and purchase from the original equipment manufacturer all the time, integration efforts that quite frankly are too costly and take too long if I just want to integrate something that's already out there. And we don't need to be there. We don't need to go back there. The commercial industry has realized it and has moved away from that. We need to continue moving in this direction. So this is our first event at that. It is really the pre-runner to modular open system architecture program in S&T right now. I ask that you participate with them. I ask that you understand where they're heading. Really, the goal of this should be, come bring me the things you've developed that work with this cockpit. And there'll be candidates for us to integrate quickly, or if you've already integrated it. It should be a plug and play. We should be able to demonstrate it to the user. He should be able to make a decision, yes or no, I do or don't want it, rather quickly, in rapid fashion. We're not there yet. We're there, I think, in creating an environment, but I have yet to see a lot of vendors stepping up saying, we're going to spend our own money so we can come show you that we play. I ask that you do that. Right? We have great partnerships, but a partnership works both ways. It doesn't just work with you asking me for money. It works with you investing based off risk that it may or may not work, but the chance that it will work and the chance that I'm ready to buy now, because we might be. So I ask that you do your homework, continue to talk to my PMs, continue to talk to certainly the TICMs as they evolve the future, and show them the art of the possible of how you can plug and play with open architectures. So we will be really advancing this rather quickly. We're going to limit user tests this year and then straight into Milestone C and LRIP. We will open this back up just to prove that once we own something, we will hand it out and we will open the kits for competition for full rate production. That will be applied through a great partnership at CCAD with AMCOM, so that will be our assembly line. And we look forward to putting that on top of the L model, refreshing that airframe obviously through reset and creating really a Mike-like cockpit for that fleet that is open and hopefully more agile. Next. All right, 47F Block II. It's moved along. We had a Milestone B this last year. We're into really heading towards, we're past CDR. We're heading towards building our first really prototypes for test. We've got good test data thus far on the blades and the components. We believe we're tweaking the blades to make sure they not only can produce the additional lift that's required, 1,500 to 1,600 pounds additional lift at sea level and greater lift at altitude as well, but also to make sure that there's no effect on cruise. That was one of the things that we learned. You're only as good as your modeling in this business. And your modeling, when it comes to aerodynamics, is not always predictable. So one of the best things we can do is get the component on an aircraft and fly it early to test our models to see how valid they are. We found issues with those predicted models. But credit to really the Philadelphia Boeing team as well as the PM. We've gotten after that, and I think we're going to stay on schedule. Down here, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about some autonomous work that we're doing with Boeing and that Boeing is doing with Canada. When we took this into a Milestone B, and we needed a material decision last year, the chief looked at us and said, we're not going to do this unless you can tell me it can be optionally piloted. Well, as you can imagine, that's awfully hard to insert in the middle of a development effort if it wasn't previously planned. However, knowing what we did with MRDEC on Mural and Matrix on the Black Hawk, knowing what Canada is getting ready to do and Boeing is getting ready to do to demonstrate autonomous capability really of our DAFIX system on the aircraft, we look forward to seeing that flight demonstration over really the next 2 years. And quite frankly, I believe it's going to be capable of that shortly thereafter. So are we going to have the ability from an airworthiness standpoint and a safety standpoint as well as a capability standpoint to present to the Army for potentially use of that doctrinal concept, which is optionally manned? Yes, I believe so, and I believe it'll be in the cargo arena relatively soon. It's a little bit of a longer effort. We want to make sure we get in here. As you can imagine, the last thing we want to do is get into get this system into the field, and on what we consider to be a critical safety item, rotor blades, kind of critical, drivetrains, kind of critical, is have an issue after we get it to you. So we're going to test the crap out of it. That's a technical term, by the way. We are really going to test it. And I've been asked, and I've been grilled, why are you testing so much? Well, the reason we're going to test it so much is so that you don't have to. Okay? And I refuse to take and cut corners on what are flight safety critical items. But we'll get it to you. This is going to merge the fleet with special operations, have a common airframe with the G, and it's going to be a good news story all around. Next slide. Okay, a little bit on our ISR events. We're working ARL-E, Saturn Arch. It's a great aircraft. It's moving along nicely for those that are interested. We're working long-range radar in concert with it. I am the MDA for that program. A lot of the good news of the past year is quite a bit of authority has been passed down to me for acquisition decisions. I don't know that we're completely where we need to be with everybody else has got those same authorities so that we can, as a group, make decisions at our level, given some of the statutory language and things that we see regarding cost estimates, contract decisions, test events. We need to work on that. If you really want to make us go fast, return the authorities to the services. And I think we'll show you what we can do. Will we be perfect? Absolutely not. We don't promise to be perfect. We promise to make it better than we found it. So this is one of those events, and we'll hopefully put this downrange. This is a high-value, low-density asset. So it will be something that we're working hard on in our fixed-wing community. Next slide. Improved turbine engine initiatives, and I say initiatives. We have a program called Improved Turbine Engine Program. It is currently out for solicitation as we speak. Proposals are being submitted, and ultimately what we're seeing is a really good response. We look forward to making a decision on that sometime around the first quarter of FY19, and our resources are aligned to be able to support that. The Army is behind that program. We look forward to whoever wins that going faster than that date right there. This is a key critical technology for our Apache and Black Hawk fleet. And ultimately what we expect is the winning vendor, whoever that might be, to help us bring that left, keep costs down, provide a great new capability to our soldiers, put a 3,000 shaft horsepower engine vice a 2,000 shaft horsepower engine on each side of that aircraft. Next slide. Oh, go back one. I want to say something about this. So one thing I did not point out on the org chart is organizational changes inside the PEO. One of the things that I did was I broke up Future Vertical Lift and ITEP, and I established an aircraft turbine engine office for aviation. If you notice, we have rarely invested in new engines. It's about, to be quite honest with you, the same as airframes, about every 40 years. We have a lot of engines that, quite frankly, and a lot of platforms that could take additional power via the power plants. We also have consistent growth in weight, MEP, that we put on these aircraft every year, whether it be manned or unmanned. Unmanned platforms consistently are asked to put additional ISR sensors, et cetera, on them. Power plant is really our weak link sometimes. It becomes our weak link. We drive exactly to what power we can generate. So that program office, Colonel Roger Kirkendall heads it. I ask that you engage with him if you want to talk about what you can do to help maximize the potential of each of the platforms that we have in the current fleet. It's really important, whether it be heavy lift, whether it be light, whether it be manned or unmanned. So he's doing so much more than ITEP. I ask that you talk to him and tell him the art of the possible, because we are interested, both in reliability and additional capability. Next slide. Okay, extended range, Gray Eagle. It's a really great news story. Ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to add 50% capability, whether it be loiter time or range, all in the same platform by upgrading it. This is one that we could potentially use go from a reciprocating engine to a turbine engine and increase our reliability 5-fold, not to mention our capability when it comes to power. But we will be at FOT&E in August. We were able to hold FOT&E in this fiscal year despite the CR. And we expect to accomplish FOT&E for that event and then have a first unit equipped this year. I will say this about CRs. CRs cause us to have to execute 12 months worth of work in 6 months. So it is the norm. We don't expect a budget in October. We expect a budget in March, which normally means the money flows down to me in July, which normally means I give it to the contractor in July or August. And guess what we have to catch up with? 10 months. Every year. We're in a catch-up mode every year. So the CR perturbations continue to cause issues, not because it's not predictable when we won't get our money. I can tell you when I will not have the money. Every year, I can tell you exactly when I won't have the money. The hard part is we have plans for each year. We're asked to develop programs for each year. And you can't ask me to develop a program and then not resource me. And I think somebody in leadership called that fiscal malpractice. I would agree. All right, so enough said, off my soapbox about CRs, but this is a program that we could have had in FOT&E right now. Could have been in the field 6 months before that. But the great work of the entire community, the PM, ATEC, leading the charge there. We're going to try and recover that schedule best we can. Key critical capability. Next slide. All right, so as I finish up, really we work with a lot of other folks inside PO Aviation, whether it be other branches, certainly the Air Force, Coast Guard, and others. We also work with other government agencies, some of which you see here, whether it be Department of Homeland Security, really doesn't matter, a lot of different agencies. And so we have entire teams dedicated to doing that mission. You saw some of our capabilities that we put downrange earlier. Next. Great partners throughout 70 nations, all around the world, and I can't tell you how much they mean to us. I know they mean a lot to the industrial base, but they also mean a lot to us operating on the battlefield with these capabilities. Next. And then our BEST program. This is how I believe, the model for divestment. Some might disagree. But if it comes to taking care of our taxpayer dollars, it's incumbent upon us not to throw away valuable assets. It's incumbent upon us to then reinvest the value of those assets in future capabilities. Our Black Hawk Exchange Sale program to date has reinvested into the Mike program. This is one of them that's out on the market today, been purchased and is being used. $200 million back into the Mike model program. So that's $200 million of money we didn't have to spend on the Mike program that then we could spend on the rest of Army aviation capabilities. Does it go unnoticed? Yeah. Do I care? No, not a bit. We're not in it for the recognition. We're in it to make sure we do the right thing, bring it, and squeeze as much as we can out of the money that we have. So the past does pay for the future. Next. All right. Last, I told you I'd tell you how we're integrating across PO Aviation. So the fundamental goal is to make sure that you, the cab, from an architecture standpoint, are not the first people to integrate things, load the system, test the system, determine weaknesses in the system, and report back. That would be really, I think, ashamed in the future environment we're going to. So what we're doing is we're standing up the Cab AL Architecture Integration Lab. It is not for S&T. Those are other SILs. Those are other labs on Redstone. This is straight up for connectivity so that we can baseline what we have. And we'll do it through the current cockpit SILs that we do have. We'll put them together. As you have to fight, we won't emulate anything. We'll actually put them together exactly as you have to do that on the battlefield. And we will get at the weaknesses in that. Really, we want to make this an environment at Redstone in the Huntsville community where industry can come and show how you've integrated into all those different unique ICDs and different cockpit architectures. Hopefully we'll have standard cockpit architectures in the future. And really an opportunity for us to see your wares and then demonstrate it in a collective environment and then make decisions across the cab. We think that there's great power in that. You want to talk about 3X, 5X? That's what that is, when you can not only plug into one aircraft, but you can plug it into 5 or 4, depending on how many MDSs we have. So we'll have that up. I encourage you to get with my staff if you're more interested in that. Again, my measures of success, once you hand something off to me in S&T, if I take it, I'm going to go try and make it affordable, producible, reliable, and survivable. That's our focus. And I don't really allow our guys to get left of that or right of that. We have had some creep outside of that in the past, freely admit it, but I think now that the team is fully integrated, we will continue to make sure that we take care of our basic blocking and tackling each and every day. Next slide. This is our last slide. This is just a little bit on how we're going to stay operationally focused. This is underneath the water top. You'll never see this. This is how we do it. Just so that you know, it's a very disciplined approach. This is not desirements. These are not adjectival goals. This is exactly how we do it. We take what we have, we conduct analysis, and this is everything right of milestone B. If it's TRL-6 and beyond, we look at it hard. We conduct trades, we offer them up. We did one of those yesterday with the branch chief and the six-pack. We're going to do it on an iterative basis so that decisions can be made quickly. We integrate through synchronized planning, and then we synchronize with you. And the ultimate goal is to give you a product that's better than you ever had before, more integrated than you had before, results-oriented, operationally focused. Next, we remain focused on the soldier. It's why we're here. It is the centerpiece of our formation as well. Have a lot of great civilians, a lot of great military, a lot of great contractors in the formation that believe it. They're here today. I encourage you to talk to them. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Don't be a stranger to us. We're open for business. Please come talk to me. Come talk to my PMs if you need to. Again, we look forward to making sure that we deliver the capabilities that our soldiers deserve, keeping them safe, and really creating the Army and the cab of the future. Thanks again. God bless. Keep Joe Heckerle in your prayers. Cool.
Well, thank you, Thomas, for sharing your vision of the aviation portfolio in the future. I think that we can all agree on one thing. The leadership that you've seen and been exposed to, led ably by Major General Gaylor, is the head of the six-pack plus one, half a baker's dozen, 7, I don't know what you're calling yourself today, but clearly a great leadership team that is taking this branch forward, and we all thank you for being here this morning.